First story. My BIL, who was also my high school bully, came back to bully me, demanding to be my groomsman. My entitled fiancé and in-laws brushed it off, then suddenly ganged up on my bully to apologize, threatening to disown him. Turns out they read my Reddit post. My fiancé 25F and I 29M are from the same hometown, but we never went to school together. I graduated high school the year before she started at the same high school. I did, however, go to school with her older brother 30M. Her brother was a bully to me during our entire school careers. He made fun of me for being fat and nerdy. He would call me racist names. They're Italian and I'm Indian, so he had a lot to say about that. And he was just overall terrible to me. I figured once we graduated, I'd never see him again, and for the most part, I was right. I went off to college out of state, and then ended up going to graduate school as well. During my first year in grad school, I was a TIA for a class, and I noticed one of the girls who I thought was very smart and very pretty. But obviously I couldn't go out with her because of our positions. Well, right after the semester ended, I ran into her at a coffee shop off campus, and we chatted for a bit. She ended up asking me for my number, and then she actually asked me out a few weeks later. We've been together ever since. At the start of our relationship, I had no idea who her brother was. They have a very common American last name, so it's not like that was going to do anything. Eventually, we figured out we were from the same town, and we went to the same high school, at which point she asked me if I knew her brother, and I said I knew of him, but not well. I probably should have told her what her brother had done to me at that point, but I was too embarrassed, so I kept it hidden. Things really came to a head when she introduced me to her family a year later. Her brother actually called me by the same nickname he liked to use to bully me, and then made a few semi-insulting remarks towards me again. My fiancé girlfriend at the time noticed and called him out on it, and he just explained that that was how we always talked before. I told her it wasn't a big deal since I didn't want to cause any drama. We got engaged 3 months ago. Recently, we were talking about wedding plans and stuff with her family, and he asked me when I was going to ask him to be a groomsman, and if I was doing anything special. I deflected, and after the call, I asked her about it. She explained that her brother expected to be made a groomsman since she was making my little sister and her still bridesmaids, and he made her a bridesmaid at his wedding. I told her about why I didn't like her brother, and she said that she understood, but it was still right to make him a groomsman. I said no again, and she got pretty upset about it and said her parents were going to be mad. I was also annoyed, so I texted her family group chat to say that he wasn't going to be one under any circumstances, and now they're all mad at me. Ada? Relevant comments. You need to rethink this relationship. I'm not going to rethink my future with her just because of her brother. OP's comment is heavily downvoted. She called him out for saying things when we first met, so I wouldn't say she's okay with it. I mean, I know that pretty clearly. What kept me alive was telling myself I wouldn't have to keep dealing with this once I went to college. But I've gotten past that trauma for the most part. I just don't want to be re-triggered during my wedding, really. What you said about this being a glimpse into the future has me thinking, though. I would normally say that I believe my fiancé would take my side over everyone else, but now I'm less sure about it. Have you had an in-depth conversation with your fiancé about this? I've already told her exactly what her brother did to me. I gave a complete recount of my middle and high school years and told her every single thing he did, as well as the things I suspected he did, but had no idea whether it was him or one of his friends. More information about the wedding. I don't blame my fiancé. Her parents are paying for a lot of the wedding, even the part of the wedding that they have no interest in. Indian weddings are pretty huge, and they've already agreed to pay their share of it, even though their guests are only going to be a quarter of the total guest list. And they don't even mind paying for the extra events that we're going to have that aren't a part of a normal American wedding. I think they just expected me to do the same as their daughter-in-law. Wait, was the bullying racial in nature? Yay, partially. Well, at least he doesn't body shame me anymore. But that's probably because I've lost a lot of weight since then. My fiancé has really helped me on that end. More info on OP's feelings. I don't think it's a stupid hill to die on. They're Catholic, so we're going to have a ceremony in a Catholic church. And I feel like if I know he's standing behind me when we're at the altar, I'm going to feel absolutely terrible. I don't want to be saying vows, and he's right there behind me. The other thing is that I'm going to be having my groomsmen wear some traditional Indian clothes for the Indian events and part of the reception. I don't feel right about having him wear stuff like that when he's made fun of my culture before. Besides, I once wore one of the things we're going to be wearing to school for picture day in middle school, and he made fun of me for it relentlessly. I have no doubt he'd make fun of the clothes at the wedding too. I don't want to be ashamed of my own culture at my own wedding. Finally, someone points out that according to other comments, he met her family 5 years ago and has waited until now to speak up about how badly he was hurt instead of laughing it off. I was just trying to avoid causing drama or making her want to break up with me. Edit. 1 hour later. I texted my BIL and told him that I felt like I deserved an apology from him. He said he had nothing to be sorry for. I told him that I didn't even want him at the wedding, and the only reason he was going to be there was because he had to be. Everyone is even more angry with me now. I know I shouldn't have said that, but he really upset me with that. I feel like I have to fix this. Edit 2. 3 hours later, so I showed my fiancée this post, and she had an actual panic attack reading through the comments. She kept repeatedly asking me if I was going to break up with her, and then she kept saying sorry. I think the comments telling me to reconsider the relationship and consider whether or not I wanted to actually have a future with her really got to her. She's yelling at her parents on the phone right now. I have no idea whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Edit 3. 5 hours later. So my fiancé's parents decided they wanted to talk to me after my fiancé yelled at them. Her mom apologized straight away and said that she had no idea we had such a history. And although she believed his comments had always been wrong, she thought I was okay with it. Her dad also apologized but tried to talk about how family was more important and that I should let this all be in the past. I said I couldn't, and he started getting really angry at me, and now all three of them are yelling at each other again. Well, mostly my fiancée and her mom vs. her dad. And I'm starting to feel really guilty about this whole thing. OP is voted NTA, with a majority of people telling him this is a hill worth dying on and that he needs to rethink his relationship. Update. 18 days later. So, I think things have been mostly resolved, and I wanted to give an update on the situation. I decided to take some of the advice that I received and to finally stand up for myself. This was all a bit too intense for me, and her mother reached out to arrange a family meeting, which happened last Saturday. Her mom actually said she wanted to clear the air since she wanted her family to be able to spend Easter together, and that included me as well, even if I don't celebrate Easter. So on Saturday, we went over to her parents' house. It was just us, since I asked to speak with them without her brother around first. Basically, we sat them down and told them that there was no way her brother was going to be a groomsman. And right now, he was pretty close to being disinvited completely. Her dad started to protest, but my fiancé backed me up. And then I just went through everything he had ever said or done to me, and then straight up asked him, if our children, your grandchildren, told you someone treated them like this, how would you feel? That shut him up, and I think he realized that our kids were going to look like me and could go through a lot of the same things. That got him on our side. So when her brother arrived, all three of them basically expressed to him how disappointed they were in his behavior. Honestly, I was surprised by how completely her parents flipped. And even though it was disappointing how they all seemed to disregard the blatant racism he showed me for so long, it was really nice to have their support now. He got pretty mad that everyone was ganging up on him. But when my Phil said that if he didn't learn to treat me like family, he was going to be the one kicked out and not me, that really got him taking things seriously. My in-laws are fairly wealthy, so I think he was afraid of being disowned and disinherited, even though I doubt that that would actually happen. He ended up apologizing, and although I don't know if it was sincere, it still felt pretty good to finally get that from him. I told him that he was still invited to the wedding, and although he wasn't going to be a groomsman, I did hope that we could move past things. He seemed to agree. Easter was pretty good the day after, and he didn't say anything even remotely snarky. Hopefully, things stay that way. He's going to come over to my parents' place with her parents for Eid next weekend, so we'll see how he behaves then. Thank you to everyone who gave me such great advice. Relevant comments. Moving forward. I've already talked to my fiancée about it. She actually still wants to disinvite him from the wedding entirely. I think the comments on the post really got to her, and now she wants to go full scorched earth on him, even though he apologized. She's even said multiple times that she doesn't know what she would do if she ever found out that he said something to our future kids. But she says it wouldn't be pretty. It's honestly kind of scary. I'm not going to trust him to be the best brother-in-law in the world. But I also think he knows he can't get away with things, so I've held her back from that. I have agreed that we should make sure to keep an eye out for how he acts around our future kids, whenever that happens. Did she ever apologize? Oh yeah, I definitely got an apology from her. Many, actually. She kept saying she was sorry for pretty much everything, even things that weren't her fault. But she was taking blame anyway. This isn't a comprehensive list, but she apologized for asking me to make her brother a groomsman, even before she knew, not respecting my refusal, not cooking dinner the night we had our big argument. This one is so weird. Not noticing how poorly he treated me before, even though she did call him out. And it was my fault that I said it was no big deal. Not acknowledging how serious his mistreatment of me really was. Allowing her brother to bully me in the first place before she even knew me. Like I said, this is not a comprehensive list, but she is definitely apologetic. More than apologetic, even. She held me very tightly the night I made that post. She would not let go. Someone comments that they wish OP had postponed the wedding because of the fiancé's actions. I don't really blame her for still pushing it even after I told her. She had a certain vision for her dream wedding, and it makes sense that she'd be disappointed if she didn't get to see it become a reality. She's already been accepting of the fact that we're also going to have certain Indian traditions and ceremonies, and it's not like those were exactly on her Pinterest board. She's still been enthusiastic about it anyway because she knows it's important to me and my family. I think she was also just hoping that I'd be able to fit into her family, the way she'd always dreamed I would. There was really no way I was ever going to actually break up with her, at least not after she acknowledged everything. I'm really in love with this woman, and she would have had to do much worse for me to actually reconsider our relationship. But yes, she did only really take it seriously when she thought there was a chance she was going to lose me, which I don't know how to feel about. There was also no postponing the wedding. We're still in the early days of planning, and we haven't set a firm date yet. We have an idea for one, but nothing solid. I don't blame her for the comment she made about our future kids. It's natural that a mother would be protective of her children, even future children. I was willing to accept his treatment of me, but I would have also lost it if I ever heard him say anything to our future kids. Hopefully, this was a learning experience for you as well about being open and honest. I absolutely agree. My fiancée actually got mad at me for not telling her the truth before. She said she was already head over heels for me at that point, so it wouldn't have even mattered. But that way, I wouldn't have had to deal with him the way I have for the last few years. I've acknowledged my fault in that, and she's made me promise not to hide anything from her again, especially about how I feel. Second story. OP's entitled Mill called her a no-good lazy BTCH after she had a miscarriage, and her delusional husband took his mom's side. Now he's having a meltdown after she left his house demanding to cut ties with her. Throwaway because I hope my wife doesn't see it. Some background. I'm an only child, and it's been drilled into me from an early age that I need to be there for my parents when they get older. For the most part, I don't mind. They've done their best to give me what I need, and I'm only too glad to help out when I can. When I got married, I was happy to know my wife shared this sentiment too. She treats my parents like her own for the most part. The issue is that my parents are currently here visiting us. They've been here for 2 months, and the plan is for them to stay another 3 weeks. This hasn't been an issue for us. A couple of days ago, my wife had what she thought was her period, but after some time she was in a lot of pain, so I rushed her to the ER, where we were told she was having a miscarriage. This was a huge surprise to both of us because we didn't suspect anything. She was sent home with orders to rest and take it easy, and upon her insistence, we told my parents that she'd had a stomach upset, and that, along with her period, made things worse. The next day, my wife was in bed resting when, and this part is based on what she told me since I was at work, my mother entered the room and asked her when she was getting out of bed, as there was work to be done. She politely replied that she wasn't feeling well, and that she would be staying in bed all day. But if my mom wanted something to be done, she would note it down and do it the following day. My wife, let's call her Lucy, told my mom that if it was a truly urgent matter, she would ask me to take care of it in the evening. My mom proceeded to yell at her and tell her she was a no-good lazy bee who took advantage of her son. Lucy started crying and asked my mom to leave the room, but my mom stood there yelling at her till Lucy picked up the phone and called me. Apparently, when she did so, my mom left the room, and Lucy got out and locked the door. I picked up her call, and she was still crying and wasn't able to give me an answer, so I rushed home at lunchtime. She told me the whole story, and I'm ashamed to say I didn't believe it. My mom had never behaved like that ever, and I didn't see her doing it. I got Lucy to take a nap and asked my mother what happened, and she told me she just asked Lucy what she wanted for lunch when Lucy started crying. I messed up again and let it slip that Lucy had had a miscarriage. I told my mom to keep an eye on her, because it might have been her hormones causing her to cry. Well, 2 hours later, I got back to work and got another call from Lucy. Except this time I could hear my mom screaming terrible things at Lucy about her miscarriage. I rushed home immediately and confronted my parents. My mom was unrepentant, and my dad said he didn't want to be dragged into the issue. I asked Lucy what she wanted, and she told me she wanted my parents out of the house immediately. This posed a problem for me, and I told her I'd put them up in a hotel somewhere for a night or two. She lost it and said that I wasn't to spend a single dollar on them, not after the things my mom had said to her. I told her sorry, but that was out of the question as my parents depended on me. She started weeping and told me to get out, and I left her alone for some time. During that time, she'd called her brother, who lives in the next town, and he turned up. He didn't say a single word. He just helped Lucy pack, and they left. I tried to stop her and get her to stay, but all she told me was that as long as my parents were here, she would not be. I didn't know what to do. I just kept calling her and leaving messages for her. My parents took it upon themselves to call up her parents who live in a different country, and essentially insult them by telling them that if they'd brought up their daughter better, she wouldn't have left. I had to snatch the phone away from them and apologize to her parents. They were totally baffled, so I explained everything to them, after which they hung up on me. That hurt. I left a message apologizing again, but they haven't replied. The next day, I got a message from my wife asking me to come to her brother's place. I went after work, and we spoke. She told me it wasn't fair that she couldn't be in her own house, while my parents were. According to her, it felt like she was being punished for no fault of her own. And then she told me that if my parents weren't out by the end of the week on their own money, not ours, she would leave me. I know my parents need to go, but each time I tell them, my dad refuses to buy a ticket to leave and says they'll leave when they plan to leave. And if I keep pressuring them, they'll disown me. I can't get them out of the house. I'm at work all day. If I don't get them out, my wife will leave me, and I can't imagine having a life without her. My parents don't care that she'll leave me. My wife doesn't care that my parents might disown me. Yesterday, her brother called me up and told me that each day my parents are in our home, and she isn't. She hates me a little more. I don't know what to do. I don't want to get the police to kick my parents out, because, well, they are my parents. I can't lose my wife. I can't see a way out of this. Help me, please. TLDR. My parents insulted my wife, and she left home. She won't come back till my parents leave, and she says she'll leave me if they aren't out by the end of the week. My parents refuse to leave. What can I do to solve this? Update. I told my parents to leave, or I'd call the cops. They're flying out to stay with my aunt for the remaining 3 weeks. My mom trashed the house, but they're out. I'm going to pick up my wife now. I have a lot of groveling to do. I'm not sure if I want to stay in contact with my parents anymore. Thanks everyone. Update. Long story short, it's all good. Long story, long. OP's wife is here. He showed me this post as we were having our much-needed conversation. And wow, it got a lot of replies. First, I was blown away by all the support in the comments. I wanted to let everyone know that I've been fine for the most part. This miscarriage was sudden and unexpected, and neither of us knew how to feel about it. But we've come to terms with it, and hopefully in the near future, we'll have a more positive result. Secondly, to add some context to the previous post, we're Indian, and in our culture, it's kind of a given that you help your parents out as they grow older. It's also a common thing for parents to have long visits and whatnot. Third, my husband is a good guy. I can understand the vitriol coming his way over failing to see his parents' past behavior. But the thing is, neither of us were able to believe his parents were capable of such behavior. He hasn't spent much time with his parents. Growing up, he stayed with an aunt and cousin to attend school, and with his grandparents during his college days. So he's never actually spent extended periods of time at home to note their behavior. The most time I've spent with them in the past was a week. And my parents were there too during that time. Okay, on to the actual update. After he kicked his parents out, my husband Jack came down to my brother's apartment to, in his words, take me home. Before he did, though, we had a long conversation and spoke about everything, which is how we came to the first and third points mentioned before. My brother was a champ and lent us his apartment for the night to give us privacy. I asked Jack what his plans with his parents were, and he told me he's not going to let them back into our lives unless they apologize. If they do, then we'll allow them to see any future children. But it will always be supervised, and they will never be left alone with them. He's on my side 100% and apologized for taking his parents' side. He told me it was hard for him to believe his parents, whom he'd always held in high esteem, were capable of behavior like that. I cried with him. I can't imagine what he's going through having to cut your parents out of your life like that. But I am glad he's on my side. We'll be going for a few sessions of counseling together. And I'm hoping to persuade him to go individually too, to handle this whole cutting parents out situation. The next day, he booked a hotel room for the two of us and asked me to spend the day doing whatever I wanted to kick back and order room service. He then organized for cleaners to clean our apartment up so I wouldn't have to do anything. He even got the carpet steam cleaned. I was amazed. The room service was amazing. I'm a bit sad about having to cook now. Haha. We're now firmly back home, and it's good to be here, just the two of us. As for his parents, they've flown to stay with his Aunt Sandra, which is, in my view, the best place for them because she takes absolutely no BS at all. He was going to call her and let her know what happened, but she ended up calling him the night his parents landed there, asking why we'd kicked them out. He told them exactly what happened. I told her not to let them spread rubbish against me, and she told him she'd take care of it. He also called a few of his close cousins to let them know what happened. So now if his parents try to drive his family against us, they can't. She called up again last night, telling us how frustrated they were that no one seemed to sympathize with them. Jack told me that he heard his mom screaming in the background about the devil her son had married, and Sandra yelled back at her, "You're the devil, hold your tongue." Apparently, when my Mill got married to my Phil, her Mill expected her to wait hand and foot on her and do all the chores, so and so forth. And she was waiting for Jack to get married so she could get the same treatment in return. It kind of explains why his father didn't say anything either. He's used to having his mother Jack's grandma treat his wife Jack's mom that way, so he didn't blink an eye when his wife yelled those things at me. I actually sometimes feel a little sorry for his mom for being married to someone who let them be treated that way. I hope that his parents spending time with Sandra will knock some sense into them, and they'll understand that unless they apologize, they won't have anyone to support them. Oh, and we spoke to my parents as well and cleared things up with them. I think they consider Jack more of a son than they did before. And while we've both thanked my brother several times, we've called him over the next weekend, and we're going to be taking him out to a great dinner. And I'm making him lots of the food he likes to take back with him. If you have any other suggestions on how to thank him, let me know. Okay, so that's everything I think. We're now going to go binge watch Doctor Who and order pizza. Thanks again for all your replies. TLDR, Jack kicked his parents out, telling them not to contact us again unless it's an apology. His aunt is hopefully trying to knock some sense into them. My brother is awesome, and I'm making lots of food to thank him. The carpets in our apartment were steam cleaned, and I miss room service. Third story. My narcissistic sister uninvited my husband and called him a cripple, and my entitled parents took her side and said I'm overreacting, so I went to NC with them too. IF, 36 have been married to my husband Brad M, 40 for the last 6 years. I have a daughter F, 10 from a previous relationship. We were engaged when he abandoned me when I was pregnant to be with his coworker and eventually disappeared. Brad loves and adores my daughter, and my daughter loves him so much. I'm currently pregnant with our first baby, my second baby. Brad is a paraplegic. He was in a car accident when he was 21. Since his accident, he has gone back to school and currently works as a university professor. He is super independent and possibly the best man I could ever marry. My sister is getting married, and today she announced that the venue she picked is a heritage building. I told her then it wouldn't be wheelchair accessible. She rolled her eyes and said, "The world doesn't revolve around Brad. It's not his day, it's mine." I said I understood, but I'm not leaving him behind. She started screaming, saying that I'm trying to steal attention because everyone will ask where the bride's sister is. Her fiancé suggested having the ceremony at the heritage building, but having the reception at another venue. That way, Brad can join us. My sister said no. I talked to Brad. He thinks I should go, and he and my daughter can have a dad-daughter date, and he will take care of her. It's a child-free wedding, and we were initially going to ask Brad's mom to watch my daughter. He thinks it's not a big deal, and I should just go and enjoy the wedding. I feel very bad and don't want to go, but my sister will be so upset. Ada, if I don't go to my sister's wedding because she is excluding my husband. Ada has no consensus bot. The OP was NTA. Relevant comments. Still Actuator 18316. Do what feels right to you. I can see you love your husband very much. And you have every right to be mad that your sister wants to exclude him. And serious. How hard is it to rent a temporary ramp to be put in place so he can go? But since I don't know the stair situation, I can give a pass on that. But there are options. OP. It's an old heritage building with lots of stairs, unfortunately. I feel really bad for my husband, to be honest. Blue furniture. I like the idea of father and daughter day. Are you at the wedding party? How does the Heritage Building get away with skirting ADA laws? Your sister is awful, and at least your fiancé is empathetic. Don't be surprised if there is no wedding. OP, I'm not at the wedding party. Sadly, it's 2024, and we still don't have something like ADA in Canada. Since it's a heritage building, they don't care about accessibility. Yes, my husband once a month has a dad-daughter date. They go to different restaurants each time and do any activities she chooses. Great Asparagus 8788. As the mom of a differently abled daughter, I have to say #1. Your sister didn't turn around overnight. She's been enabled in her rotten behavior her whole life. Your parents should be ashamed. Your hubs sound awesome, though. You don't have to ask permission to turn your back on a dumpster fire. Point out that it's on fire, and the privilege of your husband's, and their grandchildren's presence will be restored when the fire is out. And then leave. OP, my parents pay for my sister's big wedding. They did pay for my at-home reception. When we eloped as well, they invited everyone, about 14 people, to a restaurant. I talked to them. They said they do love Brad, but it's my sister's day, and they can't force her to change her mind. Yes, I'm disappointed in them. I just don't understand how you can claim to respect someone yet tell him to stay home. You are not welcome. My husband is used to not being included, so he is okay. I just can't get over it. Update. Thank you all for your kind words and advice. It's Mother's Day today, and of course my husband and my daughter decided to spoil me rotten. We went for Mother's Day lunch with my parents. My sister and her fiancé, Bob, his name is Babak. He is Iranian, but everyone calls him Bob, came too. Brad, Bob, and my dad were in the backyard BBQing and chatting. My mom and my sister were in the kitchen talking. My sister went on and on about her wedding plans. I asked her if there was any possibility that she would consider Bob's suggestion. She can have her civil ceremony, Iranian ceremony, and all her pictures done in her dream venue, then have the reception, which is just dinner, dance, and cake somewhere else. I told her it meant a lot to me if she made this accommodation for Brad. My sister lost it. Started screaming, saying that I have always been jealous of her and am now trying to ruin her dream wedding. She said I'm jealous because I never had a big wedding and had to elope because I had a kid out of wedlock. I didn't have to. It was our decision to have a stress-free elopement. She also said it was my choice to marry a crippled guy, so why should her wedding plans have to change? My mom told her to stop, but she kept on going. I told her, then I'm not coming. I told Brad and my daughter that we were leaving. I couldn't stay there anymore. Her entitlement sickens me. Now my parents are mad at me for even suggesting that your sister is under stress. My dad thinks I acted immature by leaving, and my mom says I overreacted because I'm pregnant and hormonal. I'm so disappointed in my parents for not standing up to my sister. My plan is to go to NC with my sister. I don't even know who she is anymore, so no happy update. I just cut my sister out of my life and will not be going to her wedding. Sorry for the typos. I'm very emotional right now. Comments. Jinx 3. Save Bob. Your sister is a jerk, and your parents enable and excuse her tantrums. I'd put sister on NC and my parents on LC. Swampy 63. Let them be mad. Their loss. Your sister has shown exactly who she is. Bye-bye. Hopefully, your parents will come to their senses and understand why you're not going. Captain Hina 12. Wow, insults your husband, calls him a cripple. Take shots at both you and your child for the child being born out of wedlock. And then your parents have the audacity to tell you you're overreacting because you left what? How the hell does someone even have that much audacity? And this is coming from me. Someone who, admittedly, at times, has way too much audacity. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.